Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Saba Show, and it is that time of week again for the round 6 predictions. I'm not going to waste my time or your time. Let's get into it. First game of the round is GWS and St Kilda. GWS got flogged away from home against the D's on Saturday night, and the Saints, well, they got the job done against the Gold Coast Suns. The Saints, I mean, they're 4-1 in the blink of an eye, and to be honest, I think their record's pretty reflective of how they've performed. You know, apart from that round 1 loss, which I think took everyone by surprise, they have been pretty flawless, and they've gotten the job done on several occasions by a very sizable margin. And it is not just Max King, that is holding up that forward line. That was always going to be the issue, whether it was going to all come down to Max King, but it's been a number of players in a variety of positions. I think Brad Hill has improved from, previous seasons. Jack Sinclair has emerged as probably one of the major improvers. So that's a really good sign for the Saints, and their backlines are, well, they're holding firm very, very well at the moment. The GWS Giants, I do not know what's going on in that camp right now. Leon Cameron's got to be under some severe pressure. That loss against the D's, I mean, they let the D's pile on 10 goals, and I don't really know where it came from. There just wasn't any backline resistance. You look at players they're missing in the backline, and Phil Davis is probably the only one that's worth mentioning. Jack Buckley, I mean, he hasn't been in the team for a while, but maybe he's going to be the thing that turns the tides. I don't know. I really don't know with that team, but they should not be losing by that big a margin. Regardless, this game, you would back in St Kilda to win, given the records, but I think it goes a lot deeper than that. You go to Saturday afternoon, and this is actually pretty intriguing. It is the Bulldogs and the Crows at Mars Stadium, and I could probably imagine that it is going to be pretty gusty up there, or rainy, one of the two. But the Bulldogs, they beat North. I mean, they piled on the goals in the first quarter, and it was pretty much all over at quarter time. I mean, if you're a North supporter, you're probably leaving the ground. The Crows, I mean, I didn't back them in to beat Richmond, but to their credit, they performed very, very well, winning that one by 3 goals. And I tell you what, that Crows forward line at the start of the year would have been a big, big worry, especially if you just look at them from like a list standpoint, but they've actually got some players performing this year that weren't last year. They brought McAdam in as an inclusion, and he performed very well. They brought in, well, they didn't bring him in, but Himmelberg's been in the side for a few weeks, and he's kicked a couple bags, which is something that they've been looking for ages. And Tex Walker came back, and he's actually really added a different dynamic to the Crows forward line. It looks a lot more dangerous. As for the Bulldogs, Bailey Smith is an absolute machine, and he doesn't go to the bench, which, I mean, you dream of that as a coach if you got players that can do something like that. Timmy English has been a force to be reckoned with in the ruck, or something along those lines. And I mean, they did what they had to do last week. This is actually a pretty tough game, but I would back the Dogs, given it's a home fixture and they play more regularly up here. Haven't played there for a while though, so it could be anyone's game to win. Crows lost Rory Sloane as well, so a little bit of leadership lost in the midfield, and that could be very valuable, so I think the Dogs will win. And we look forward to Port Adelaide and West Coast. This is the battle of the cellar dwellers. I mean, this would have been positioned as a top 8 clash last year, and this year it's a completely different story. The Power, well, to be honest, I'll give them a lot of credit for coming back from 50 down and nearly winning, but they're up against Carlton, and you know how we do. We love to choke leads. So Port Adelaide, I mean, they had a few opportunities in that last quarter there to absolutely finish off the Blues, but they did not do that. And they should not be getting into the position of being down by 50 at halftime in the first place. So that's on them. The Eagles lost by 63. They didn't kick a goal until late in the second quarter when they were already down 55 points. And that is a huge, huge worry because they brought their players back last week. I mean, you looked at the inclusions, and years ago, you would have been dreaming of those inclusions. They would have really raised the ceiling of how you would perform. But last week, I mean, they just look like a shadow of their former selves. This is a really intriguing contest, because I would have backed the Eagles to win this, but given they had their players back last week and got flogged by 10 goals, I'm actually going to back the Power to win this one probably narrowly, but I think they can do it. There's got to be a point where they pick up a win, and I think in front of a home crowd, which won't take no for an answer, I think they're going to live up to the pressure and will win. And we go to the one night fixture on Saturday night. It is Fremantle and Carlton. This is a very, very good game of football coming up. I can just sense it. The Bombers got flogged by Fremantle last week, and that was an 8-goal win for the Dockers. Matt Taberner kicked 7. I believe that is the biggest haul for a Fremantle player since Pavlich. So they've been begging for goals, or someone that can sort of be in that Pavlich type mold that can kick a reliable bag of goals every week, and that'll place Fremantle in a position instantly to win games or win more games of footy. For Carlton, I mean, it's always the impending worry that they're going to choke a lead. It doesn't matter how big the lead is that they possess. They always have the chance of choking the lead. To be honest, I mean, the 4-1 record that the Blues currently stand at is a bit misleading, I feel. They've won 2 games by combined 4 points. So, yeah, equally, it could have been an absolute colossal win in both of those games, and their percentage would be sky high. So, honestly, I don't know who's going to win this. Fremantle have proven me wrong on numerous occasions. I'm still not sold because their record has been, or not record, their fixture's been pretty weak. They've come up against the likes of West Coast, Adelaide, St Kilda, which they lost against, and that's probably the best team they played. Essendon as well. I mean, these guys are all at the bottom of the table, so it is a tough one to pick. I'm going to back Fremantle at home because they've been pretty rock solid all year. Brayshaw's been a gun. I'm interested to see if Carlton puts someone like Hewitt on Brayshaw and try to quell his influence, but nonetheless, I think Fremantle will get the job done. Early Sunday afternoon game, and it is North taking on Geelong in Hobart. And this game is, well, look, I'm going to back Geelong to win this one from the get-go, but let's just look at North's performance for a second. I mean, they did well to claw back into the game somewhat in the second quarter. After that, an absolutely abysmal start. But the game was always going to be over. It was always going to be tough to come back against a side that, you know, obviously had built up that lead and has a lot of quality on that team, at least more than North Melbourne. So it was always going to be up against them as soon as they went down by a sizable margin. You look at the Cats, and I do not know what to think. They are such a weird team at the moment. They've beaten teams. They've come back from deficits, but they've lost 2 games of footy against Hawthorn. I cannot remember the other team. It was Sydney. But this game, they should have not lost. They were up at 3-quarter time. Somehow they are held to no goals in the last quarter. Given who they've got in their forward line, you would have expected them to kick goals. But Hawthorn just looked more up to the task. Won territory, won the 50-50 battles. And, I mean, this is a characteristic we haven't really seen from Cats footy in a long time. They are probably one of the most clinical sides, at least in the past decade, to finish the job, basically. And they weren't able to do it against the Hawthorn side, who are, you know, up and about. They are also 3-2. So, look, I mean, I'm going to back Geelong to win this. They're going to bounce back, but it is a little bit of a worrying sign if, you know, with that last quarter effort where they had a chance to win the game, and they basically threw it away. So, little bit of a red flag, but obviously you wouldn't be too worried. They are still 3-2, and that's a pretty respectable record. We go to the 4-10 fixture, Gold Coast, Brisbane. Gold Coast lost to St Kilda last week. They're 2-3, and the Lions are 4-1. They beat Collingwood narrowly, and to be honest, I feel like Brisbane should have won that game by more. The Collingwood Magpies, very spirited effort, obviously away from home. You know, the Gabba can get a little bit feral. But, you know, the Lions, they did what they had to do. They went into the game as favourites. They needed to win the game. Dane Zorko going back, I'm not too sure what to make of the move. It's happened for a couple weeks now, and my general consensus on that one, if that makes any sense, is that I would prefer he goes back in the guts. But then again, you've got, like, talent oozing out of that midfield, so there's probably no more room for him. I actually think it's somewhat of a good idea if you can utilise his kick going off half-back, and they've already got Daniel Rich, so to make it a little bit more potent, I think that move back for Dane Zorko isn't too bad of a thing. In the forward line, I think McStay's been pretty underrated. Darcy Fort's been good as well as the second ruckman. He's going to go out of the team instantly when Hipwood's back, but I think he's held his own pretty well. For the Gold Coast Suns, I mean, there's not much to say about them. They're just so mid. So mid. Like, the wins they've gotten, they've beaten West Coast and they've beaten Carlton. Carlton have only lost a game. West Coast have only won a game. So I don't really know where you place the Suns. They actually put in a good effort. They were up at times against the Saints last week, and it sort of had a very similar vibe to that game against the D's, where they hung around for the majority of the game but never had the legs to get it done, or the quality. They're just a bit behind, you know. I don't think they're a top 8 side. I think they're probably between the 9 to 12 region. At least that's how they're playing at the moment. So I think Brisbane are going to do the job here. But, hey, the Suns, I think they could go with Brisbane once again, much similar to a couple other games this season for them, but I still think they'll fall short. We've got the Tigers and the D's on Sunday night, and the Tigers lost against the Crows. And look, they didn't look really comfortable for the majority of the game. I mean, the Crows looked like, yeah, they were the better side all day. And ultimately, you know, the loss shows in the results. They deserve that loss 100%. The D's, I mean, best side in the comp by a mile. I mean, who is going to beat this team? I'm not really too sure. And I think it'll come in the latter stages of the year. At least if you look at it from how they've played the first few weeks, they've just looked a class above every single side they've played. Max Gawn's back to peak form. He kicked a couple goals last week and made the GWS ruck look silly. Richmond, as I said, you know, they shithoused their way into the game just a little bit. They actually were up at some point, but then the Crows, that second quarter, they piled on the goals, and Richmond could never really recover. They were always, you know, in that, like, you know, they were within reach, but, you know, ultimately, surprisingly, I actually backed them in to win the game, but we've seen numerous times this year, they're not the same Richmond side as the past few years. You see them down by 2 goals. A couple of years ago, you would have backed them in to run over the top. They've had that same opportunity presented to them this year, and they haven't been able to do it. So, look, Melbourne a win. I mean, it's pretty much a no-brainer. I think they're too hard to go past. Weirdly enough, we have a Monday game at 12:30 on Anzac Day, and it is Hawthorn taking on Sydney. Hawthorn with a very, very character-like performance, if that makes any sense, to get up over the Cats. I mean, I wouldn't have backed them in at three-quarter time, and they surprised me. The Swans won by 63 against the Eagles. Their first half, I didn't watch the game, because quite frankly, it was boring as hell if you just looked at the scoreline and you didn't really have any intention to watch the game. But they did pretty much everything right against West Coast. I mean, the game was over at halftime. They probably could have sat on, you know, on a lounge, and West Coast still wouldn't have been able to come back. The Hawks, as I said, they were staring down the barrel of 2 and 3 losses in a row after a very positive start to the year. I mean, they're big players, Bruce and Gunston. I think Gunston kicked a couple in the second half, which was really important to how they performed. Jai Newcomb, rising star nom this week, and much deserved. He was getting a lot of the footy in the midfield, and Tom Mitchell didn't have the greatest of games, so I think Newcomb really made up for that really well. Won a lot of clearances and whatnot. I still think the Hawks rookies are acclimatizing to the AFL, so they get a pass. But their backline as well has been unbelievably good. Starting the year, I think a lot of people would have forgotten how good their team was, given the fact that so many of them were out last year. Impey was out, Hardwick was out, Sicily was out, Will Day was out, and is now still out. So there's a lot of names that were missing. So we actually didn't really know how well this Hawks team could perform. And seeing these guys back has allowed these younger players to actually relish the opportunity and flourish, because you got players like Ranger Barras who would have been isolated last year. You know, they had a big responsibility because there was no one else to hold up the fort. And this year they can sort of, You know, just ease into things a little. If they're like the third best key defender, that's okay, because that's all they need to be. Look, this is a tough one. I'm going to pick Sydney, but Hawthorn, I mean, they're notorious for a very good record up in Tasmania, so I wouldn't be surprised if they won, but Sydney to win close. Last game of the round, it is the traditional Essendon-Collingwood Anzac Day game. Essendon, I mean, they've been absolutely roasted in the media this week, and we haven't even gotten past Wednesday. The Pies, they've had some pretty mediocre performances in the last couple of weeks. Well, last 5 quarters. That last quarter capitulation against Geelong, and then you've got the West Coast loss. I mean, both of those games they should have won. They were in winning positions, and they didn't get the job done. This game was probably their best performance in the last 3 weeks, I would say. Most complete performance, however, they did not pick up the 4 points. I didn't think that their forward line dynamic with all those key forwards was going to work, and it probably compromised how well Grundy performed, but Kruger was very strong. Mason Cox, the sunglasses don't work. I know they're not for the sun, but they don't work anyway. And then I'm trying to think, well, they didn't have Myercheck, they didn't have Ginnivan. Degoe came back and had a very big influence. I think he kicked 3 goals. And probably, you know, in excess of 30 plus touches. So chuck him in the middle and make him go to work, because he is just an absolute weapon. Jack Crisp was also very good. The Bombers, as I just said, I've got nothing to say about them because they've already been roasted. But their performance was just shithouse. They've got no forward depth. I mean, who is their second key forward? In the back line, there's probably no designated key defender either. They're all like half-assed defenders because they either are swingmen or they're not tall enough or whatever. So they're a bit of a mess at the moment, and they have too many midfielders. So Nick Cox, does he play forward or back? That's a question mark. Collingwood are going to win this game. Essendon, I don't know if they're going to rock up. They did rock up against the D's a couple of weeks ago on the big stage. So are they going to do something similar and rock up to the Anzac Day game? I'm not sure, but I think Collingwood will get up given their strong performance last week. That's it from me. This was a bit of a longer one than usual, but I do hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe. This is a weekly thing. We've got Dice Footy coming out tomorrow as well, Thursday 4 p.m. And that's going to be it from me. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out.